was for IVF. So I don't know if you guys know. I don't know a lot about IVF. I've been watching other people's channels and I've kind of gone into the message boards. I have trouble keeping up in the message boards because I don't know all the IVF acronyms and I don't know what everything means. So I had a lot of questions for her today. She was very gracious. I love her to pieces. Very patient in explaining it to me. Like I knew some things like specific to egg, like that the zona pellicuta gets hardened, but I didn't know a lot about IVF. That's what I'm trying to say. And she was very gracious and generous in her time. Hi, thanks for clicking on Simply Tanika. I am Tanika. If you are new here, welcome. Hit that subscribe button. Let's hang out a while. If you are returning, welcome back. Let's get those babies, ladies.
I see the crystal raindrops fall and the beauty.
Good morning, fertility fam. How are you? Today is Monday, August 20th, and I am headed to the RE. I am, of course, running late, so I'm going to put on my clothes, and it looks like rain, so we'll take a raincoat, and we'll shaboogie. Just an update, still no AF. I didn't test this morning. I'm tired of peeing on sticks, quite honestly, and she'll do an ultrasound and blood work, and we'll know definitively today, so I can stop torturing myself. Another symptom, bleeding gums. So I have a dentist appointment, I think, in 4 weeks. For cleaning, so not sure if it's actually a pregnancy symptom or just timeliness. All right, talk to you in a little bit. All right, we made it outside. It is sprinkling, it's not too crazy. My hair is like semi-straight, so I'm trying to not make it too crazy looking. Yeah, so I am running late. I'm meant to be there at 10. I should get there about 10:30. I am seeing the doctor today, like a sit-down meeting, so hopefully that's not an issue and they don't make me reschedule. Usually when you're doing blood work, they're not too particular. Well, I shouldn't say that. They are not as strict. Yeah, so I brought my notebook. I have some questions for the doctor. She's gonna do blood work and ultrasound, like I said earlier, so we can figure out like where I am in my cycle. Maybe I actually didn't ovulate, miscalculated my ovulation date. I don't know. I think I did because of all the other symptoms that I'm having, like the sore nipples. But I don't have confirmation. So, and really, if you don't do 7 DPO, 7 days post-ovulation progesterone, it's hard to tell. But it should be low by now, so like 0.1. So, and then we'll see and look at all the other numbers. But yeah, today, just as a refresher, I want to get from her the information of what my protocol would be for IVF, confirm that she's agreeable to one more IUI, get the exact medication name and dosage so that I can meet with the nephrologist and review the impact of those medications on my body. So that's kind of it. Not sure how long I'll be. Hoping I'm out of there by 11:30 or noon because I do have to get to work. And yeah, I brought my water, or my water bottle, so it has like Crystal Light in it right now, and water. I'll finish that one. The goal is to finish that on the subway, the 33 ounces, and then by the time I get to the doctor's office, fill it up and drink my second bottle by the time I leave the doctor's office. So I think in order to do the 5 a day, I've got to at least do 2.5 by noon, or it's a wrap. And hopefully that will help with my cravings. Although I didn't eat last night. Cheyenne didn't clean the kitchen by the time I got back, and I asked her to, and then an hour later she still hadn't. And then she did, and I didn't feel like cooking. So I'll do better today. We'll both do better today. How are you guys doing? I hope all is well. I hope you can see me. I know it's this umbrella. I'm trying to get myself light. How are you guys doing? What's going on with you? Any BFPs? Anybody starting a new cycle? New cycle is always a new opportunity. Let me know down below what's going on with you ladies. All right, I will talk to you at the doctor's office. Bye. Hey ladies, I'm here. I'm actually kind of excited. I was dreading everything yesterday and now I'm excited to be back. Like I haven't been here since my canceled cycle and now I'm like, okay, let's get those babies. Dr. McConnell. I love her. She took the time to explain everything, and it all made sense. So, you know the best way to make God laugh? Make plans. I think all the goals that I have, we're gonna have to reevaluate them. Yeah, I think we're gonna go right into IVF. She was saying, she gave me the instructions for the salines on histogram, explained that it would not be as intense as the HSG, but she did recommend taking some Tylenol before. Yeah, I have notes because I had a lot of questions, and I'll sit down and go through it with you, but I think the highlights of it are going straight to IVF and not another IUI. And I'll explain to you why. And I also asked her about the percentages because I know people had questions about it, and I hadn't questioned it before. But the percentage for success rates is based on my specific hormone levels and what they typically have seen. So it is based on what my FSH was, is why the percentage for success for IUI and IVF are the same for me. It's not the same for every woman. There is the expectation that based on my age, the quality of my eggs is diminished, so that also impacts it. And I asked her about, well, isn't it true that with the ICSI, the zona pellicuta can be penetrated and confirmed versus with the IUI, it can be hardened and not? She said yes and no. You can confirm penetration, but it doesn't mean that the DNA are going to mix properly and that fertilization will happen. And so it doesn't increase the chances of a successful pregnancy outcome, which is how they measure success. When they're saying the percentage, it's based on a take-home baby, not on fertilization, not on getting pregnant, but delivering a healthy baby. So when I get back to the office, I'll sit down and give you guys all the notes, because I did take notes, but that was kind of the high level of it. And I'm going to have to start my detox sooner rather than later, because we're go for the IVF. All right, I'll talk to you guys in a bit. I stopped because it's whoa, it's wet out here and my shoes are slippery. But yeah, I'll talk to you guys when I get to the office. I just need to process this, but I wanted to tell you that while it was fresh in my mind. And I'm excited though. I'm excited for the first time in a long time. I can see the light at the end of the tunnel, I feel. And not because of the IVF, but because I know the end is coming no matter what. So I know that where the end of the tunnel is, literally and figuratively. All right, talk to you in a bit. What's up, fertility fam? How are you? I've made it home. I came home early. MTV is having their VMA Awards over at Radio City Music Hall, which is right across the street from my office. It was all chaos. They were shutting the streets down, so I'm home. So I didn't get to talk to you guys from a conference room, but I get to talk to you from my living room, and that's even better because we're in the privacy of my own home. Had a great conversation with Dr. McConnell, went over some things with her. As I told you guys, I wanted to talk to her about IUI versus IVF. I wrote everything down. I normally go in with like just my iPhone and I take notes, but sometimes I miss things, and so I took in my handy dandy TTC notebook, which hopefully you can see that. It says, stay focused and extra sparkly. So a couple of questions I had from her just off the bat was, can I do another IUI? And she said it was totally up to me. It was my money. She laid out what the protocol would be if I decided to move forward with another IUI, which was we would add FSH testing to my baseline protocol, which we hadn't been doing before. They'd been doing E2 and progesterone and HCG. So they would add the FSH. If it was elevated 20 or above is what we were defining as elevated, then we would not medicate me that cycle. The reason being 20 or above FSH, in her experience, there will be no response, which is what we saw last time, right? When my FSH was 22. So that makes sense. 15 or below is what she would want it to be in order for me to move forward with the medicated cycle. And she said from at 15, it was like a 1% chance of pregnancy, a successful pregnancy. And then if it dropped below 15, that increased it to less than 5% chance. However, she said they use it as a benchmark, whatever your highest FSH is, and then they kind of average it out, so you can never really get rid of that bad one. She referred to the bad one as 20, but you'll remember I had a 50 when I was at RMA New York, one cycle that I had to sit out. So all things being considered, my FSH would have to be controlled. So that would be if I move forward with IUI. And then we talked about IVF. And my questions there were, because before she had said I needed to do the saline cytohistogram before I could move forward with the IVF, where that was contingent, like I had to come back and have no polyps and everything be clear in order to, check that off, that would not be a hindrance to a successful IUI or IVF. And so I wanted to know if I could do that while I was on the medicated cycle for IUI, because I was trying to run it in parallel, and her answer was no, I would not be able to do that. The saline cytohistogram, which is called an SHG, instead of an HSG, SHG. The saline cytohistogram, she said, would disrupt the lining, and so that would lessen the chances of success if I were doing it while I was in a medicated IUI cycle. So that's what I wanted to know. And then I just kind of wanted to know what the criteria was for IVF. So I don't know if you guys know, I don't know a lot about IVF. I've been watching other people's channels, and I've kind of gone into the message boards. I have trouble keeping up in the message boards because I don't know all the IVF acronyms and I don't know what everything means. So I had a lot of questions for her today. She was very gracious. I love her to pieces. Very patient in explaining it to me. I knew some things, specific to egg, like that the zona pellicuta gets hardened, but I didn't know a lot about IVF. That's what I'm trying to say. And she was very gracious and generous in her time, especially because I was late. So what she would look for in the IVF cycle from me physically, they would want to see 3 growing follicles after I was medicated in order to move forward with it. The follicles would need to be 18 to 20 millimeters. That indicates that there's likely a mature egg within that follicle. And they would like to see the estradiol or E2 at 150 to 250 per follicle. Because I asked her, so if I have 3 follicles, does that mean that I should have, my E2 should be 600? Is it 200 per? And she said it's kind of on average. So they would look at it, they would look at a total number and a total count. So if you have, 3 and then you have 150, if my estradiol was 450, that would fit within the parameters of, on average, of 150 to 250 per follicle. Does that make sense? If not, leave it in the comments below, because I asked a lot of questions, so I'm just trying to replay where I landed, but if that doesn't make sense, let me know. And that would be done on this measurement at between 10 and 12 days of stimulation. So, it wouldn't be day 3, it wouldn't be 18. If it went that far, they would cut it off and cancel the cycle. They're not going to keep stimming me. The protocol would be, they would start me with an estrogen patch to lower my FSH before we got started with anything else, because again, we don't want that elevated FSH. It decreases my opportunity of success in IUI or IVF. So any medicated protocol, it decreases, because especially in IVF, she said they're adding FSH, they're increasing the follicle stimulating hormone, which is FSH. And so if mine is already high, it means my body is already working really, really hard to try to get follicles stimulated, which it's kind of counterintuitive because you always think higher is better, but not with your FSH. You want it to be as low as possible, because that means your body is girl, I got you. I'm on my way with those follicles. If it's high, that means it's struggling, okay, I'm gonna get it. So high is not good. So my protocol, they would start me with an estrogen patch, and they would start that on cycle day 21 of the cycle before we would be doing the IVF, to kind of lower my FSH, quiet everything, get me ready to go. So then I would come in on between cycle day 2 and 7 for my blood work, antral follicle count, all that fun stuff. Antral follicle count is just your resting follicle count, and I'll talk a little bit about that later because I have a paper that she gave me. But so they would look at my antral follicle count, they would do all of my blood work to see where everything was, they would check my ovaries for cysts and just make sure everything is normal and cool and copacetic. If all that pans out and I've had my estrogen patch from cycle day 21 to cycle day, let's say I go on cycle day 2 of the following cycle, then they would she would start me on follistim, I think I'm saying it right, follistim and gonal F, at 450 is the dosage that she gave me, and I think it's ml/IUI, but don't quote me on that. We just were talking dosage. I put 450. I didn't ask like the measurement. And then we would move on to Minipure at 150 would be the dosage. We would have a mid-follicle scan, which is similar to what we do in the IUI, but in this case, again, we would be looking for those 3 growing follicles. So we'd have one to kind of check on them. How are they doing? Is, you know, do we have at least 3? What are they looking like? What's the blood work looking like? Make adjustments as needed. So if they look like they were going to be great, but by the time that 10 to 12 day threshold hit, keep the medicine the same. If they look like they're struggling a bit, pump it up. If they look like they might be ahead of that schedule, kind of reel it in a bit. So just checking in with my body, seeing how I'm responding, adjusting the medication accordingly. Then we would come back one more time before we made a decision about that cycle. If we hit day 12 and the follicles look good, we're clear for an egg retrieval in that cycle. If we hit day 12 and I don't have at least 3 that meet this criteria, we would have to cancel that cycle, which is kind of scary, right? So that was what we went through. Let's see what else. And for the SHG, she told me that I would need to call Nicole, who's her coordinator, on cycle day 1. And Nicole's gonna ask me like the length of my cycle and yada, yada, yada. And then we would schedule the salience on a histogram. And she gave me a printout of this. I had this checklist before, but we kind of just like went through it again. So quickly, I'll go through this with you guys. FSH, which I said, they'll do that at the beginning. E2, which is the estradiol, which is a form of estrogen. The luteinizing hormone, or LH, which is what we measure when we're taking our lovely OPKs. That's what helps us get our ovulation going. And then the baseline and ultrasound for the AFC, which is the antral follicle count, as well as seeing if I have the cyst. The AFC, it's basically looking at the follicles, and follicles at that point are like little fluid-filled sacs with immature eggs in them. And so they're kind of counting what's up. Our ovaries, I'll insert a picture, but they're kind of like lumpy things, but not all the eggs are ready every single month because we would blow our wad all at once. So some of them come up. The AFC, antral follicle count, will vary from month to month, but it's obviously pertinent in that cycle that you're in. So in that cycle, they want to know how many you have, right side, left side, and they're looking at how many you have, how big they are. Yeah, they should be able to be seen, measured, and counted. So that's what they're going to do then. Does that make sense? So that's kind of my checklist when I have the salience on a histogram, which I'm kind of excited about. And yeah, and I think AF is going to show up. I had like the TMI, the loosened bowels, which usually happens when the progesterone drops. And so I just had that this afternoon. No spotting or anything yet, but I typically don't spot. I'm usually like a morning starter, and so I'm thinking tomorrow will be cycle day 1. We did take my blood work, as you guys saw earlier in the video. I think I still have my Band-Aid on. Yeah. But because I was in so late, I didn't get a call today by 5 o'clock, which I wasn't expecting it. I was hoping maybe, but I didn't. If I had gone in through monitoring hours, which is 7 to 8:30, I would have gotten my results back today, but I was late. I didn't get there till like 10:45, and by the time they did my blood work, it was probably 11:30. So in the morning, I'm sure they will call me. I'm also like 99% sure now that AF will be here. So having said all that, what are our next steps?
I see the crystal raindrops fall, and the beauty of it all is when the sun comes shining through to make those rainbows.